In the 9th century BC, early Phoenician settlers and traders will begin arriving on what we know today as the Iberian Peninsula. The seafaring Phoenicians, Carthaginians, and Greeks will begin establishing trading settlements along the eastern and southern coast. And by the 6th century BC, much of the territory of southern Iberia passed to Carthage's overarching influence as its grip strengthened from the 4th century BC on. But from 218 to 201 BC, the peninsula would become one of the military theaters of the Second Punic War, waged between Carthage and the rising Roman Republic, the two powers vying for supremacy in the western Mediterranean. The Romans would expel the Carthaginians from the peninsula in 206 BC, and Roman control was gradually extended over most of the Iberian Peninsula without annexations. It was completed by Augustus, the first Roman emperor, who would finish annexing the whole of the peninsula to the Roman Empire in 19 BC. Under Roman rule, Iberia would be named Hispania. The peninsula's economy expanded greatly under the Romans, and the populations of the peninsula were gradually culturally Romanized, and local leaders were admitted into the Roman aristocracy. The first Germanic tribes to invade Hispania arrived in the 5th century AD as the Roman Empire decayed. The Visigoths, Suebi, and Vandals arrived in Hispania by crossing the Pyrenees mountain range, leading to the establishment of several kingdoms. The Visigoth kingdom eventually encompassed a great part of the Iberian Peninsula. The Visigoths, having assimilated Roman culture and its language, tended to maintain more of the old Roman institutions that resulted in continuous frameworks and historical records for most of the period between 415, when the Visigothic rule in Hispania began, and 711, when it is traditionally said to end. By 710, the Umayyad Caliphate dominated most of North Africa. In 711, an Islamic conquering party was sent to Hispania to intervene in a civil war in the Visigoth kingdom. They would cross the Strait of Gibraltar and win a decisive victory in the summer of 711, in which the Visigoth king was defeated and killed at the Battle of Guadalete. The Arabs would quickly cross with reinforcements, and by 718, the Muslims were in control of nearly the whole Iberian Peninsula. The advance into Western Europe was only stopped in what is now central France by the West Germanic Franks at the Battle of Tours in 732. The Muslims would return to Iberia and attempt to concentrate their power. The Christians still in Iberia would retreat to the mountainous northwest, where they established the tiny kingdom of Asturias. The Umayyads tried to dislodge this last Christian holdout, but the Christians defeated them at the Battle of Caledonia in 722, and in 750 the Abbasids would overthrow the Umayyads and establish a new caliphate in Damascus, but Moorish Spain would remain loyal to the Umayyads, and a rival Umayyad caliphate was founded in Cordoba. In opposition to the Abbasids, under the caliphs of Cordoba, Moorish Spain reached its peak, and for 3 centuries the Umayyad armies would march north to ravage the lands of the Christians, looting and pillaging. But by 1031, the Caliph of Cordoba would collapse into many squabbling city-states. Meanwhile, the Asturians had expanded and became the Kingdom of Leon, which began to dominate the Moors. The Leonese kings could now begin to conquer and raid deep into Moorish territory. The Christians seemed poised to retake the whole peninsula. However, Christian dominance in Spain was challenged by the Almoravids, a powerful Berber dynasty from North Africa, which came to dominate the Moorish states in Spain. The Christians, however, would continue to push their frontiers further south. In 1118, the King of Aragon managed to capture Zaragoza from the Moors, and by the mid-century the power of the Almoravids was broken, but another threat would arise from North Africa, the Almohads, who would dominate Moorish Spain in the late 12th century, and in 1195 the Almohads would win a crushing victory over the King of Castile at the Battle of El Argos, but this would be the last Moorish victory, as at the dawn of the 13th century, an era of Christian dominance in Iberia would begin. In 1212, the kings of Aragon and Navarre crushed the Almohads at the Battle of Las Navas de Tolas. This battle proved to be the turning point in the Reconquest, and the Almohads were shattered as a major power. Over the next couple of decades, the Christian kings would conquer what remained of Moorish Iberia until all that remained was Granada on the southeastern tip of Spain. During the 15th century, in the years 1475 through 1479, the War of Castilian Succession was fought. After the death of King Henry IV of Castile, Queen Isabel I of Castile, Henry's half-sister, was supported by the Kingdom of Aragon and the Castilian nobility. She ultimately retained the throne with the help of her husband, King Ferdinand II. Isabel and Ferdinand's marriage would unite the crowns of Castile and Aragon and set the stage for the creation of the Kingdom of Spain. The Catholic monarchs, as Isabel and Ferdinand were known, oversaw the final stages of the Reconquest with the invasion of Granada. In 1492, Isabel and Ferdinand would authorize Christopher Columbus's expedition, which marked one of the first known European encounters with the New World. Spanish conquest and colonization began with the Canary Islands in the early 15th century and continued with the colonization of vast stretches of land in the Americas and the Philippines. Spain also established colonies in North Africa, spanning from the Moroccan coast to Libya. When Charles I became King of Spain in 1516, Spain became a central player in the dynastic struggles of Europe. In 1556, Charles abdicated his position and gave his Spanish empire to his only surviving son, Philip II of Spain. In the 1560s, plans to consolidate control of the Netherlands led to unrest, which gradually led to the Calvinist leadership of the revolt in the 80 Years' War. This conflict consumed much of Spain's expenditure during the later 16th century. The Great Plague of 1596 through 1602 killed about 10% of the population, or 600,000 to 700,000 people, which destroyed the labor force and dealt a psychological blow to an already problematic Spain. Spain experienced severe financial difficulties during the mid-16th century, which persisted throughout the remainder of the Habsburg rule. Philip III was succeeded in 1621 by his son, Philip IV, whose policy overexerted Spain in foreign affairs led to the renewal of the 80 Years' War, while Spain also was embroiled in the 30 Years' War. The long regency for Charles II, the last of the Spanish Habsburgs, contributed to the country's decline. In the 17th century, the Spanish army did badly in many battles, while Spain built a rich American empire that exported a silver treasury fleet every year. It was unable to focus its financial, military, and diplomatic power on building up its Spanish base. In 1700, Charles II died with no direct heir and was succeeded by his great-nephew, a French prince, leading to the War of Spanish Succession of 700 to 714, which pitted supporters of the Bourbon succession against those for the Habsburg. Eventually, the Treaty of Utrecht recognized Philip V as King of Spain. In the early 19th century, Spain was significantly affected during the Napoleonic Wars, which took place from 1803 to 1815. Initially, Spain was an ally of France, but in 1807, the French Emperor Napoleon Bonaparte invaded Portugal, Spain's neighbor. Napoleon then forced King Charles IV to abdicate in favor of his brother Joseph Bonaparte. The Spanish people, however, did not accept Joseph Bonaparte as their king. This led to a prolonged series of resistance against French rule. In May 1808, the Spanish uprisings against the French began in Madrid, and this marked the beginning of the Peninsula War. The Spanish resistance was supported by British forces, and the conflict lasted until 1814. During this time, the Spanish economy suffered greatly, and the country experienced widespread poverty and famine. In 1814, the Treaty of Paris ended the Napoleonic Wars, and Spain regained its independence. However, the country was left with a weakened economy and a weakened monarchy. This led to a period of political instability that lasted for several decades. Between 1808 and 1826, Spain experienced a series of uprisings in North and South American colonies, resulting in the loss of all its mainland holdings except Cuba and Puerto Rico. After the loss of their colonies, Spain played a minor role in international affairs, as business and trade in the former colonies were dominated by Britain. Between 1833 and 1839, the First Carlist War was fought between conservative and traditional Carlist supporters and the supporters of Queen Isabel II, who were liberal and progressive. The war ended in 1839 with the victory of Queen Isabel's forces. Isabel would remain in power from 1833 to 1868, but was widely unpopular. In 1868, a military uprising known as the Glorious Revolution overthrew Queen Elizabeth II and established a provisional government. This government was marked by instability and corruption, and it failed to resolve many of the country's economic and social problems. In 1870, a new constitution was adopted that established a constitutional monarchy, but it did little to stabilize the situation. The country remained divided, with Carlists and supporters of the monarchy all vying for power. Finally, in 1874, a coup was staged, and the monarchy was restored with the coronation of King Alfonso XII. This period brought some stability to the country, but it also was marked with political corruption and repression of political opponents. The Spanish-American War in 1898 led to Cuba gaining independence, while Puerto Rico, Guam, and the Philippines were ceded to the United States. Spain's remaining Pacific islands were sold to Germany, leaving the Spanish with colonies only in Africa. In the later years of Alfonso XIII's reign, the bipartisan system began to disintegrate into factions, leading to a political crisis. Spain's neutrality in World War I spared the country from carnage, but caused massive economic disruption. In 1936, a civil war would break out in Spain between the Republican government, which was democratically elected, and the nationalist rebellion, which was led by General Francisco Franco, who was supported by conservative and fascist forces. The war was marked by brutal fighting on both sides. The war would end in 1939 with the victory of the nationalists and the establishment of a fascist dictatorship under Franco. Under Franco's rule, Spain maintained a policy of official neutrality during World War II, remained culturally and economically isolated from the rest of the world. Spain's colonial rule in Africa ended in the late 1960s, with Equatorial Guinea gaining independence in 1968 and Moroccan holdings being ceded to Morocco in 1969, although the cities of Ceuta and Melilla remained under Spanish rule. When Franco died in 1975, the Spanish state was paralyzed, allowing Morocco to invade Western Sahara, Spain's last colonial possession. From 1978 to 1982, Spain was governed by a democratic Senate Union. This era of political change also brought about liberalization of values and social customs. Spain would join the Northern Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO, in 1982 and would join the European Union in 1986. Both were crucial milestones for Spain's transition to democracy and the strengthening of its international relations. The EU membership brought significant economic benefits to the country, including access to a larger market and increased investment, bringing us to today where Spain is the fourth largest economy in the EU, the 13th largest in the world. Spain has close relations with other European countries and the United States, with whom it shares strong economic and strategic ties. In recent years, Spain has faced several challenges, including high unemployment rates, political instability, and regional tensions. However, the country has continued to make progress in its economic and social development, and it remains an important player in regional and global affairs. Thank you for watching our video on the history of Spain and Iberia. If you enjoyed, please consider subscribing and checking out one of our other videos. And as always, thank you for watching The Knowledge Show.